All right, so you're prepping for that big senior software engineer interview, and we're diving deep into microservices today.
Yeah,
Everyone's talking about microservices these days,
right.
but we're going beyond the buzzwords. We give you some real insights you can actually use in your interview.
More than just a trend.
Right.
Microservices are a fundamental shift in how we think about applications,
Yeah.
moving away from those massive monolithic structures to smaller interconnected services.
Yeah, like instead of building one giant, like
Exactly.
a giant cake,
Yes.
you're making a platter of like bite-sized desserts.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Each one can have its own flavor, and you can pick and choose.
Yeah, you got it. And the beauty of that is it brings us to technology heterogeneity.
Okay, so what does that even mean?
Well, it means you can use the best tool for each job.
Okay.
So you might have a social graph that works great with a graph database, but user posts might be better suited for a document store.
Gotcha. So you're not tied to one specific technology
Right.
that could become outdated or inefficient as the application grows.
Exactly. It gives you agility, adaptability. Think about a company in a fast-moving industry.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. And we've seen this with companies like Netflix.
Netflix.
Everyone knows Netflix uses microservices, but I've also heard about Gilt.
Oh, Gilt is a classic example.
What do they do?
Scalability.
Okay.
Back in 2007, they had this monolithic Rails app.
Uh-huh.
By 2009, it couldn't handle their Flash sales traffic.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those are crazy popular.
They broke it down
Into microservices.
over 450 microservices.
450. That's a lot.
It is, but each service could then scale independently.
Oh, so they could handle those traffic spikes without over-provisioning the entire system.
Much more resilient and responsive.
Yeah, and being able to talk about that in an interview.
Oh,
You just understand the real-world benefits of microservices, not just the theory.
It's practical experience, right? And it leads us to another advantage. Robustness.
Robustness, okay.
Microservices introduce the concept of bulkheads, isolating failures.
So if one service crashes, the whole application doesn't go down with it.
Exactly like compartments on a ship.
Right. I get the analogy, but how does that actually work? What mechanisms are in place?
Well, it's about designing them to handle failures gracefully.
Okay.
Think about circuit breakers.
Circuit breakers.
They're like safety switches that trip when a service starts misbehaving.
So they prevent those cascading failures.
Precisely.
Interesting. So it's not just about preventing a single point of failure.
No.
It's about handling those failures gracefully and keeping the system running.
That's it. And this kind of thinking, anticipating failures, is crucial for a senior engineer.
Yeah, being able to discuss that in detail would definitely impress an interviewer.
It shows you're thinking about the big picture system reliability, not just individual components.
And this granular control extends to scaling, too.
Sure.
You don't have to scale the entire application.
Only the services that need it.
That's a huge cost saving.
Absolutely.
Like back to Gilt, they could scale the services handling the flash sales instead of everything.
Precisely.
Targeted scaling for efficiency and cost effectiveness. Interviewers love that.
And that brings us to deployment agility.
Okay.
You can deploy updates without affecting the entire system.
Oh, because each service is independent.
Right.
So faster releases, quicker bug fixes, less risk.
All of that.
Wow, imagine explaining that in an interview.
Right.
Talking about how microservices empower teams to deliver value to users quickly and efficiently.
And aligning with those agile methodologies that are so important at the senior level.
Exactly. And speaking of alignment, microservices can actually be structured
Yes.
to mirror your development teams.
Exactly.
Wait, so you're saying you can have like smaller dedicated teams owning and managing individual services?
Absolutely. Fostering autonomy, faster development cycles, and greater ownership.
Wow, that sounds like it could really streamline the development process.
It can be a very effective model,
But I'm sure there are challenges too.
right? Of course, every approach has its challenges.
So it's not as simple as just breaking things down into smaller pieces.
It's about managing the complexity that comes with that breakdown.
Right. And what about this composability I keep hearing about?
Yes. Composability, think of it like Lego bricks.
Yeah.
You can combine and reuse these services in different ways, adapting to new needs and platforms.
So you're not just building for today, you're building for the future.
Exactly. That adaptability is a key advantage of microservices.
It's like future-proofing your application in a way.
Precisely.
Okay, we've talked about a lot of great stuff so far, but I have a feeling there's more to this story.
Oh, definitely. Microservices aren't a silver bullet.
Right. There must be some downsides or challenges.
Absolutely. We've only scratched the surface.
Okay, well, let's dig into those challenges in the next part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've been painting this pretty rosy picture of microservices, but I suspect there's more to the story. It can't all be sunshine and Lego bricks, right?
Right. Microservices offer a lot, but they definitely bring some complexities too, especially compared to a monolith.
hmm Yeah, we talked about bulkheads and circuit breakers, but things still go wrong.
Hmm.
And with all these services talking over a network, there's more room for problems, right?
Absolutely. Networks aren't perfect, machines fail, and those interactions between services can fail too. It's not a question of if, but when. You have to design for those failures.
Okay, so it's about expecting those failures and building in ways to handle them gracefully. What are some key things to think about when designing for failure in this kind of environment?
One big one is service discovery. How do services find each other when things are constantly changing?
Right. You can't have them hard-coded to specific IP addresses if those addresses are changing all the time.
Exactly. So you need service discovery tools acting like a dynamic directory for the microservices.
Makes sense. So services can find each other even as things come and go. What about handling the load when you have multiple instances of a service running?
That's where load balancing comes in. You distribute requests across those instances so no single one gets overloaded.
Right, so it's like spreading the traffic evenly across all the available instances.
Exactly. There are different algorithms, each with their own pros and cons depending on the service.
Sounds complicated. Keeping track of all that traffic and making sure it goes to the right place.
It can be. And then you add potential failures into the mix.
Even more complex.
Right, that's why understanding circuit breakers is so important.
Oh yeah, those safety switches.
Exactly. They monitor the health of a service and prevent requests from going to it if it's having problems.
So it's like preventing a domino effect where a failing service takes down others with it.
Precisely. And this is the kind of deep thinking that sets apart a senior engineer, anticipating those problems and knowing how to mitigate them.
It shows you're not just thinking about one piece, you're considering the whole system.
Right, the bigger picture. And that leads us to another challenge, the operational overhead of managing all this.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot to keep track of. Multiple deployments, multiple code bases, monitoring systems.
It's a whole different mindset. You need automation and tools to manage all that complexity effectively.
It's like having a fleet of small boats instead of one giant ship.
Right.
More moving parts means more to keep track of more that can go wrong.
A good analogy. So you need to embrace automation containerization with Docker infrastructure as code, robust monitoring and logging.
Streamlining everything as much as possible.
Exactly. And this has implications for operations teams as well as developers.
Right. It's not just a developer's problem anymore.
Microservices often lead to closer collaboration between dev and ops, that whole DevOps movement.
Breaking down those silos and sharing responsibility for the entire application lifecycle.
Exactly. It's a cultural shift as much as a technical one.
Wow, we've gone from Lego bricks to container ships to DevOps. It really highlights how microservices touch every part of an organization.
You're absolutely right. And there's one more layer we haven't touched on, data management.
Okay. How does that work with microservices?
Well, in a monolith, you usually have one central database. But with microservices, each service might have its own.
Oh, so each service has its own little data silo. How do you make sure everything stays consistent across the whole application?
That's the challenge, right? If a user updates their profile, how do you make sure that change is reflected everywhere?
Yeah, it's got to be consistent.
It's a fundamental challenge in any distributed system. There are different approaches. Some organizations use eventual consistency where things sync up eventually.
So there might be a delay.
Right. Others use more complex distributed transaction mechanisms to make sure things are consistent right away.
But those probably come with performance overhead.
Exactly. It's all about trade-offs, choosing the right approach for the specific application and business needs.
So there's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to data in a microservices world.
Exactly. You need to be able to evaluate the different options and make informed decisions based on the context.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've gone from those high-level benefits to all these details. Service discovery, load balancing, fault tolerance, data management. It's a lot more than just breaking an application into smaller pieces.
Definitely. But remember, complexity isn't always bad. It's about managing it effectively. And when done right, microservices offer incredible flexibility, scalability, and agility.
It's a powerful tool, but it's not a magic solution.
Right. And being able to explain all these nuances in an interview, that's what will make you stand out as a senior candidate.
It shows you're really thinking critically about the architecture and not just following trends.
Exactly. You're understanding the trade-offs and making choices that make sense for the business.
This has been incredibly helpful. I feel much more prepared for that interview. But before we move on, is there anything else we should cover?
One more crucial thing that's often overlooked, people and organizational structure.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Microservices require a shift in culture and team structure. Remember aligning services with smaller autonomous teams? That means a different way of working, more collaboration, communication, and shared responsibility.
So the technology impacts how the teams are structured.
And how they operate. In many organizations, this cultural shift is the hardest part of adopting microservices.
Because you're not just changing the tech, you're changing how people work together.
Exactly. You need to break down silos, foster collaboration, and make sure teams can communicate effectively.
So as a senior engineer, you need to understand the human side of things too, not just the technical side.
Absolutely. It's about seeing the bigger picture, how everything connects technology, people, and processes.
It's all starting to come together.
Yeah.
Microservices are more than just an architecture. They're a whole new way of thinking about software.
Well said. And I think that's a great place to transition to the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore some specific scenarios and techniques you can discuss in your interview.
Perfect. So we can really impress those interviewers and show them what we've learned.
Exactly.
Thank you. Welcome back. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground with microservices, the good, the bad, and the complex.
Yeah.
But now let's get practical.
Yeah.
How can you use all this knowledge to actually ace that senior software engineer interview?
It's about going beyond just knowing the definitions. You need to show you can apply these concepts, solve real problems.
So give us some examples. What are some things our listener can talk about to impress those interviewers?
One thing is walking them through how you design a feature using microservices. Let's say you're building an e-commerce platform.
Okay, like an online store?
Yeah, you could break it down into services like product catalog, shopping cart, order processing, payment, gateway user management.
Okay, I see. But we need to go deeper than just listing those services, right?
Absolutely. You have to get into the details. How would they communicate? How do you ensure data consistency across all those services? What about error handling?
So you'd need to talk about things like asynchronous messaging for communication, maybe a distributed tracing system for monitoring and troubleshooting.
Exactly. Show them you understand those complexities and you've thought about solutions.
It's about painting that picture, showing them you're thinking about the whole system.
Right. And another good tactic is talking about migrating a monolithic application to microservices.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. A lot of companies are facing that challenge.
It is. And it shows you've thought about those real-world problems.
It's not just theory, you understand the practical side of things.
Exactly. You could talk about techniques like the strangler fig pattern, gradually replacing parts of the monolith with microservices.
Or the branch by abstraction approach, breaking things down incrementally.
Right. Concrete examples that show, the strategy.
It's about showing them you've thought through the steps. And even if you haven't actually done a migration yourself,
right,
you can still show you understand the process and the challenges.
Absolutely. The key is demonstrating those problem-solving skills and your grasp of the concepts.
Okay, this is all great, but I want to reassure our listener they don't need years of microservices experience to impress interviewers. Even if they're newer to this, just showing enthusiasm, a willingness to learn, thinking critically about the benefits and challenges.
That goes a long way. Senior engineers aren't just judged on what they know right now, but their potential to learn and grow.
Right. Showing that you're engaged with the latest trends and ready to tackle new challenges.
That's what they're looking for.
Awesome. Well, I think we've given our listener a really solid foundation here. Understanding microservices, the complexities, the practical stuff, and how to showcase it all in an interview.
Yeah, they should be feeling much more prepared now.
Remember, microservices aren't a silver bullet, but they're a powerful tool when used strategically.
Yeah, thoughtfully.
Exactly. Go into that interview ready to discuss those trade-offs, the challenges, and your passion for learning.
Show them you can think critically, solve problems, and build the future of software.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And that wraps up our deep dive on microservices.
Yeah.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering. Keep learning, keep exploring, and good luck with that senior software engineer interview.
Best of luck.
And until next time.
See you then.